Finding a Solution speaker this evening is conservative author and political commentator Margaret Hoover. Please welcome her to the stage.
Thank you for having me here today. I'd like to introduce myself as a non-Charlestonian because I am really just a Republican from the American West that lives in New York City. But I've been coming here to Charleston since my godparents, who are Charleston, frankly, King Street shop owners, moved here 12 years ago. And 3 years after that, I had the good fortune of marrying into a family that has called Charleston its home for 3 decades. So while I am not from here or of here like you, I am blessed to be able to claim a little bit of the Holy City for myself. The morning of July 18, 2015, I was up at 5:30 in the morning to appear on CNN, where I work as a political analyst with expertise in Republican politics. This job used to draw on my experience working in 2 presidential campaigns, working in the White House of George W. Bush, working on Capitol Hill or the Department of Homeland Security, and these days really just depends on my inability to decipher Donald Trump's latest tweets. We checked in with the segment producer at 5:30 that morning and didn't hear anything back, which was unusual because CNN is very eager to get us on air, but you all know if you've watched CNN lately, the only thing that will bump a run-of-the-mill political segment is a tragedy. And when we heard we were canceled, we turned on the television and had reactions probably similar to many of you: hearts sunken, stomachs wrenched, and disbelief that anesthetizes the mind until it can grasp the extent of the devastation. Since April 1999, the year that the largest and worst school massacre hit my own hometown in Littleton, Colorado, until the shooting here at Mother Emanuel, the breadth of American geography has suffered more than 30 mass shootings. The most infamous we know by location: Tucson, Newtown, San Bernardino, Brookfield, Wisconsin, Virginia Tech, Aurora, Atlanta, and now, just 2 days ago, Alexandria, Virginia. And with this history, I am here as an outsider to tell you that Charleston was different. It was different because you're different. And you were not just different, you were better. And you made America proud. More than anywhere else that has endured these massacres, Charleston stood as a beacon of light. Surely your deep-running diverse faith traditions informed your response. You met the worst of humanity with the best of humanity and delivered with purest grace from God a divinely inspired response of forgiveness, of mercy, of understanding and duty, grieving together, peacefully uniting, reflecting openly, acting swiftly. Charleston truly evoked John Winthrop's shining city on a hill, and you were an inspiration for an entire nation. This forum, the Charleston Forum, continues that example. And I wonder if we could just have a thought experiment about what would happen in every community that suffered from one of these massacres if they experienced the kind of forum that we're here today to enjoy and to think about and to reflect upon. Just think if there were an Orlando forum that would discuss the history of LGBT discrimination after the Pulse nightclub massacre. Or if there were forums across the country to help identify and treat mental illness after the massacres at Columbine and Aurora and Sandy Hook Elementary School. What you are doing here today is talking about the history of the past, the systemic discrimination, the uncomfortable truths that really do underlie the expression of that hate that reared its ugly head 2 years ago. This is the real work of love. And as Casey Aaliyah said in the very first panel, to hear from people who think differently even when it hurts is how we find progress. I take personal inspiration from you and from this forum today. Truly, I think of my work as a Republican consultant and as an activist who really wants to modernize the Republican Party so it can connect to a new generation of people beyond the narrow demographics that the party appeals to today. And I wonder if we couldn't ask ourselves in that political party some of the exact same questions you're asking yourselves here today. With the obvious exceptions of Nikki Haley and Tim Scott, which maybe is another example of South Carolina leading the way, you cannot deny the fact that the Republican Party is enormously white and has very, very little diversity, especially African American representation. When you have, and it's not funny, because you can't have a political party that represents a great tradition and a future of the country that deals with really important policy issues that you're talking about here today: social justice, racial discrimination, the future of the past, educational opportunity. If you have one party that lacks the diversity that the Republican Party does, when you have 49 federally elected members of Congress and 3 of them are Republicans, you've got a real problem. And this is why, while we're not talking about politics today, it actually is important for the country and for our political system to take heart in the example that Charleston is leading today by being reflective and actually asking tough questions. That won't just make Charleston better, it will make the ripple effect of the country better and our politics better. Beyond what I do at CNN, I run a gay rights organization that helps Republicans navigate LGBT equality. And I think about the example that you're setting here today, which is an example of reflection. And what we do is work with conservative Republicans and religious leaders to balance protections to LGBT Americans and religious freedom. Because what many of you may not know is that there are 30 states where you can still be fired for being gay, kicked out of your house if you're transgender, denied housing, denied other basic public accommodations. These are historic battles that you are too familiar with. In trying to convince and persuade some of the most conservative Americans that it is possible to balance religious freedom with LGBT equality, we have turned to another example, which might surprise you, but it's the state of Utah, a state where 60% of the individuals there are members of the Jesus Christ Church of Latter-day Saints. And Utah is the most religious state in the country, but recently passed a law to fully protect transgender, gay, and lesbian Utahns from being fired for their jobs or denied housing simply because of who they are. Now, there were real concerns that the Mormon Church had to protect the religious freedom of LGBT, of Mormons in Utah and protect LGBT Utahns. But much in the same vein as the spirit of Charleston, the church and the government ultimately came together to protect both. It is my hope for this gathering today that while we reflect on issues of racial injustice, that we might also extend that self-reflection more broadly to new issues, where you can apply the lessons of understanding and compassion to healing beyond politics. Because South Carolina is one of those states where you can be fired for being LGBT or kicked out of your housing. And you're so close to this social injustice history, and you have come so far since the tragedies 2 years ago that you have, I think, sown within you the spirit of healing. I flew into Charleston International Airport yesterday and had the honor of taking a few moments to myself, a rare luxury of a mother with 2 children, under 3, and had a chance to visit the Airport Aviation Authority's exhibit to Mother Emanuel Church and the victims. Reverend Pickney's Bible was there on Mark 4:13, the parable of the sower, with the placard reading, "The people attending Bible study that night represented the good ground, people who applied the truth of the gospel to their lives by opening their hearts at their church to a stranger." What you are doing here tonight at the Charleston Forum is to continue that lesson of that day of Clementa Pickney, and continuing to be the good ground and the fertile soil that grows and spreads God's word. And in that this is about finding a solution, I would remind you that you have led the country in this spirit with which you handled this situation. And I am confident that the love and the courage that Charleston's shown will continue to inspire and shine a light from which all Americans can learn. This is your solution. Thank you.